Hi friends, you are welcome in this video. Friends, in this video I am going to tell you about a very famous modern novelist, Eric Arthur Blair, who is popularly known as George Orwell, and we know him for his novel Animal Farm, an allegory based on politics. So friends, in this video we will discuss about the life story of Eric Arthur Blair or George Orwell. We will know about some of the major events happened in the life of George Orwell, or how did George Orwell become the George Orwell, his pseudonym later he taken while publishing various essays and publishing his books. So friends, actually the life of Eric Arthur Blair or George Orwell is filled with struggle, and it was the life of very struggle and bitter experiences. So this video will explore those bitter experiences occurred in the life of George Orwell. So friends, let's start with his childhood. He was born on 25th June 1903, and he was born in India in Motihari, the part of the then British Raj in Bengal. So friends, his parents Richard Blair and mother Mabel Blair were from a middle class, and his father worked in Imperial force, or worked as a serviceman and official in the British Imperial force, and he retired on a very low salary when George Orwell born, and the family got into troubles of money, and it lacked the economic assistance, and the family has to move from India to England or to their native place, because they could not bear the expenses here in India. So the family had to go there in England. Then due to these conditions in family, or the sore conditions in family, George Orwell was sent to a private boarding school where he got very bitter experiences of his life. He was tortured by fellow students and some of his teachers due to his poverty. He was tortured there, and he suffered mentally, and he also suffered there from bronchitis. So friend, this was his childhood, where the scars of poverty were very firmly set into his mind, and he was developing a kind of hate towards the other people, towards the fellow students there in the school. But he was bright in his school. He was a bright student in his studies, and he gained a scholarship. He could own a scholarship, and he used this scholarship to study further. He went to Eton on this scholarship, and he studied there. And in Eton, he tried to write in college periodicals, which was his early writing in his writing career. Friends, later he wished to continue his study from 1921 onwards. So his economic condition was not so good, and he could not pursue his further study, and he has to found job. So friends, he studied there in the Eton, a very fine institution, from 1917 to 1921. Further, he also wanted to continue his study, but the further study was only there in the university, and it was not in his condition that he could get the university education, and he has to abandon that education. Some of his friends advised him to take a job or find a job due to his economic conditions. It was a very deteriorating condition of George Orwell, and he found a job in the British Imperial force in India, and he took that job in the British Imperial police, and he went to Burma, serving there for the British Empire. There he collected a lot of experiences, and later these experiences were delineated in his novel Burmese Days, which is published in 1936. Friends, his experiences in Burma was of a different kind of experiences. He was not satisfied with his job there in the Burma. He found that how Britishers were employing their rule on the native people, and how they are oppressing the native masses. So he was not satisfied there, and at a point he wrote about this British imperialism and the Britishers who were ruling there. So he expressed his dissatisfaction. Let me read that very quotation he uttered. "For 5 years I had been part of an oppressive system, and it left me with a bad conscience I was conscious of an immense weight of guilt that I had to got to expiate. Now friends, these were his remarks on the British imperialism, or how Britishers oppressed their native people. Friends, we can see through these words that he was a very considerate man, and he respected the human feelings, he respected the feelings of human beings, though they are from lower strata, or though they are from different societal background. So this was his first impressions, because he was taking these experiences from his childhood, and he developed a kind of hatred for the ruling class, and this has been reflected in his many works. And friends, again he left this job in 1927 and returned to England, and decided not to return to Burma, or that place. So friends, he again tried to write and publish some of his works, or some of his essays, and first he was rejected by many publishers. Friends, in London he has to live in poorer parts, in people of lower strata, and he lived in very filthy areas there in the London. Later these experiences he collected and published in his later works and essays. Friends, again in 1928 he thought that he must go to Paris and pursue his literary career, and he goes to Paris there in 1928, and he tried there to write some of the essays and some of the early reviews for the publishers and for the newspapers. But at this initial point he has been rejected by many publishers, as he was rejected in the London. In the Paris also he faced disappointment, and he got nervous and very disappointed there in the Paris. So the 2 years in the Paris was utter disappointment in the literary career. There he went out of money, and he lacked money, and he has to work in a fashionable hotel as a dishwasher. He worked there as a dishwasher. Now friends, look at his life, how he suffered from poverty and the poorness from his childhood to his grown-up years, and he was struggling constantly to survive himself. He was struggling, he was going behind his wish and will to become a writer, but he was not getting success. Now friends, success is not so simple that we can get, or we can acquire it in within months or within years. It takes life, as we think through the life of George Orwell. There are so many writers in English literature like George Orwell who suffered many struggles in their life, and George Orwell also is a very fine example of that. And friends, in Paris he again collected so many experiences, and we can find these experiences from London and Paris, which are expressed in his works. And let me tell you some of the essays, some of the works in which we find his experiences. Actually, if you look at the very literature of George Orwell, we find that most of the literature is based on his experiences from life, his utter, sore and pungent experiences from the life. So here are a few essays which are very finely expresses the experiences of George Orwell, and he became the very well-known author due to his experiences. So let me read those essays or works. Here we have Down and Out in Paris and London, one of the famous book delineating his experiences, published in 1933. Then we have Road to Wigan Pier. Then we have Hanging, it is an essay published in 1931. Shooting an Elephant, again an essay published in 1936. The Spike, again essay 1936. How the Poor Die, 1941, it is also an essay. Now friends, if you look at the titles, we find that these titles are borrowed from his experiences. For example, How the Poor Die. Now this is his mindset, because it is firmly set in his mind that poverty is a very dangerous thing, or poverty is a very destructive kind of thing. It can destroy anything. So this has been delineated in this essay. Friends, then living for 2 years in Paris, he did not get success, and hence he has to return to his native place in Southwold, and he goes to his parents there in the Southwold in 1929. There he became a tutor, first to a disabled child and then to a young 3 brothers. Among these 3 brothers, one of was Richard Peter, later who became a very famous and distinguished academician. He became tutor to these people and he earned some of his livelihood and supported his parents. But his parents also supported him in his career or in his life. But friends, his economic condition did not improve and he faced again lack of money and so many things. So again he became a teacher in a school and there he earned more than the earlier, but still the condition was grim. But here one thing happened in his favor, that he became regular contributor to Adelphi, a very popular magazine in those days. So friends, in 1932 he tried to publish his account of experiences called A Scullion's Diary, which was the earlier version, or we can say that first impression of Down and Out, but it was rejected by the publisher. Again he sent the same copy to Faber and Faber, one of the famous publishing house in those days, and it was again rejected by T.S. Eliot, the then director of the Faber and Faber. As we know, T.S. Eliot, a very famous modern poet and critic, he rejected George Orwell's this Down and Out in 1932. So friends, with these rejections there was a good thing running in his life, that is he was writing for Adelphi, a popular magazine, and he could pursue his writing career through this magazine, writing some of the essays and reviews there. Again friends, with this appointment he decided to again return to his native place from London and work there. Meanwhile he took various teaching jobs and he received some good kind of jobs, for example in Frey College, which was bigger institution than the earlier schools. So here he could get some money, but he was not again satisfied with that job, and again in 1934 he returned to his parents there in Southward, and there he has to work on various jobs or different kinds of jobs which were not in his career or which was not part of his life. So friends, if we look at his job profile, we find that he did a lot of jobs, various jobs, different kinds of jobs, but he was prominently later became a writer and journalist. In 1935 he met an attractive young woman called Eileen O'Shaughnessy, and in June 1936 he married her. At the time Spanish Civil War broke out and he went with his wife to Spain to cover this Spanish Civil War. There he became the victim of a stray bullet on a road, and it has got a wound in his body. So this was again a very bitter kind of experiences in the Spain. Now we can find these experiences in his work called Homage to Catalonia, later published in 1938. After the end of World War I, he again returned to England, and there he regularly writing in literary journals and the journals of those days, and again he tried to maintain his livelihood through this writing, but it was very difficult him to earn livelihood through the writing. And again the very bitter povertyful days reversed back in his life, and he struggled a lot to survive his wife and survive himself. But with a minor operation he could not survive his wife, or he could not save his wife. His wife died due to a very minor operation, and again he became very disappointed. Meantime, in 1944 his masterpiece Animal Farm was ready to publish, but the 4 publishers were rejected it to publish, and later in 1945 it is published in Britain, and again in the next year 1946 published in United States, and then he became a very famous author or famous novelist. Now friends, he was in the shock of the death of his wife, but his literary career was gaining momentum at the time. But in the next year, that is 1947, he diagnosed with tuberculosis. Again a very shockful situation in his life, again a very grim and danger kind of situation in his life, and he never recovered from that very illness. In 1949 he was hospitalized, and there in the hospital he married to Sonia Brownell, his second wife, whom he was earlier familiar, and he courted her earlier in the same year. and this marriage lasted till his death. And in the again very next year, that is in 1950, he was died early in the morning due to bursting of a artery in his lungs. So the very life of George Orwell ended on 21st January 1950. Now friends, if you look at the life of George Orwell, we find that it was the life of struggle, it was the life of full of bitter experiences, but still his wish to write, still his wish to become a writer was very strong. And at the end of his life, he was established as a very famous and a very significant author in modern English literature. And friends, this author has given us famous novels like Burmese Days, novels like Animal Farms, and many essays and life experiences. So friend, this was the life of George Orwell. So if you have anything to share with me regarding George Orwell or the life of George Orwell, please comment there in the comment box. I will try to answer your comments, and I will also appreciate your comments. So friends, thank you very much for watching the complete video. Please share this video among your friends, subscribe to Literature Simply, and please press the bell notification icon for updates.